Okay, well, I will get started. Hi everybody, and thank you for joining us this evening. My name is Rachel, and I am joined by my colleague Stephen, and you can see both of us here. And we are hosting this webinar this evening because tomorrow is GIS Day. So first of all, this was not really planned, but we have our t-shirts on that we wanted to model for you. So Stephen has a lovely map themed t-shirt on, and I have one that says storytelling with maps. So we're all dressed for the occasion, and we're very excited to be presenting this to you and chatting with you this evening. So I'm just going to introduce myself and a couple of things before Stephen leads the way with the main event. A few things just to cover. First of all, if you do have any questions at any stage, you should be able to type them in. There's a question box and a chat box. One of us will be able to monitor that while the other's speaking. So if you have any questions, please don't hesitate. And this is also being recorded, so you can watch it back at a later date if you want to go over anything again. And that will be sent to you whenever this is finished. So you'll get access to all of that. So my name is Rachel Abernethy, and I'm a GIS consultant at Esri Ireland. And Esri Ireland has two offices, one in Dublin where I am normally based and one in Hollywood in County Down where Stephen is normally based. But of course, as you can tell, and well, would be at home now anyway, but we have been working from home for the past couple of months. And for me, that I'm still in Dublin, but hopefully I'll be heading up north to Coleraine when the restrictions lift again. I'm really looking forward to that. But yeah, I've been working from home for a while. And for the past couple of months, I have also been working on the ArcGIS for Schools programme, while my colleague Aideen, who some of you may know, has been on maternity leave. And I wanted to tell you a little bit about that just before we get started today, because I'll come back to it later on. But the ArcGIS for Schools programme provides our online GIS software, ArcGIS Online, for free to all schools in Ireland and Northern Ireland. So that is our online mapping platform, but it also gives you access to our field app, like an app you can use on your mobile phone or mobile device, and it's called Survey 123, and you can go out and collect primary data, so it's really useful for field trips, and then you can look at that data on a map using Arc Online back in the classroom. So I guess I'd love to talk to you all about that, but today we are talking about missing maps, and you do not need to have an ArcGIS Online account to do a missing maps project or mapathon. But what I thought would be really cool is that if you are doing a missing maps mapathon with your class, then you could present that or let other people know what you did by putting together a bit of a presentation or project, and you can do that using our software, and that is using a part of it called Story Maps, which is why I have this t-shirt on, and it is just a cool way to put maps together and images and videos and text, and I'll explain a little bit more about that later on, just as a way of kind of bringing all of this together. But for now, I'm going to hand it over to Stephen, who's going to do his introduction and let you know all about missing maps, which is why you're here this evening. So thank you very much. And take it away, Stephen.
Thanks very much, Rachel. I'm just going to turn off my webcam just for the time being, so I don't get self-conscious when
I'll probably do the same here, and I'll mute myself, but I'll join in when needed.
No problem. So good evening, everybody. Thank you again for attending to learn a bit more about missing maps. So as Rachel said, I'm a GIS consultant in Esri Ireland, based in the Hollywood office. I've worked there for nearly 2 years now, but in my spare time, over the last 6 or 7 years, I've been involved in humanitarian mapping and contributing to the Missing Maps project by mapping, and then also by, whenever we were allowed to, by sometimes organising what we call a mapathon, where it's basically a mapping party similar to this, except usually you meet in person. So I suppose for the rest of the evening, what I would like to do is I suppose I'll take you through a presentation and introduce you to the what missing maps, what it is, why is it needed, why do we need a missing maps program, who are, I suppose, the main people who benefit from missing maps, and then I would like to, I suppose, give a bit of a tutorial and show you how, and you can get yourselves can get involved, and hopefully then you say, also then maybe get your school children and the pupils involved as well. Okay, so, but to start off, I always like to start off my presentations with a bit of mapping history. So, and it's sort of, this man here in the picture is called, he's a man, very famous man, it's called Jon Snow. Not related to Game of Thrones or the news presenter, and he was a physician in London. In 1854, in London, there was a cholera outbreak, which we obviously know was a waterborne disease, but at the time, the most common theme of how disease was spread, I thought it was through bad air and through smells. But Jon Snow didn't believe this. He thought that it was caused by something in the water. So he went to Broad Street in London, where the centre of the epidemic was, and he mapped where everybody was who had got sick was, and this is usually what the black dots are on the map here. And as a result of his mapping, then he traced it back to a single pump in the middle of Broad Street, around here, and he got the authorities to basically remove that the pump that they used to pump the water out, and they removed that, and then the cases sort of dropped down. And suppose it was the sort of the birth of epidemiology, which obviously has come a long way, and as we are in the middle of a pandemic, it's crucial and critical to things we face today. So that was, I suppose, an important use of maps in 1854, and bringing it up to date. I want to talk about this guy here, and this guy is called Ensheng Dong, and he's a graduate student from Johns Hopkins University in Baltimore. And earlier this year, January, he heard of a new viral contagion that was beginning to spread in Wuhan in China, and this was near where his parents lived, and he was concerned about his parents and this viral contagion, and so he met with his faculty advisor, called Dr. Lauren Gardner, and they discussed this, and then they decided to use GIS to then monitor and map the unfolding events. And sort of, this is what Ensheng then produced. It was a dashboard showing, recording all the cases of COVID-19, I suppose it's throughout the world. So he started by updating this himself twice daily. He did it manually. I think in the first month he slept about 2 to 5 hours a day, because he was combing the internet for information. But as this got more popular, then Esri sort of came on board and automated the process. And as you can sort of see here in the bottom left hand corner, this map was updated less than or slightly over an hour ago, at 6:25. So this is sort of real-time mapping of a pandemic and of a number of cases and things like that. So, but I suppose why am I talking about these? Well, I suppose the thing is, without a map, this would just be red dots on a page. Without on the Jon Snow map, without a map, it would just be black dots. So mapping is really important. This leads me on to missing maps, because every year natural disasters, in normal years, not pandemics, they nearly kill 100,000 people, and they displace or affect 200 million people. Sorry, and lots of these things occur in places around the world where there literally is, no mapping information that then can be used to assist whenever these people are at their lowest and need help. So this is why the Missing Maps project was set up. It was set up in 2014, by a number of organisations who I will come on to mention a bit later on, because there was a need for mapping. So, again, why is mapping required? So this actually was a map that's been used by MSF, or Médecins Sans Frontières, to assist in one of their projects, and it's basically somebody is drawing on a page information that people have told them about where towns are, where roads are, important information that they may need to get the places, but so it's not really fit for purpose. Sometimes we may now think that Google Maps, we have Google Maps, why can't they use that? Well, this is a place called Baraka in the Democratic Republic of Congo. I believe it or not, 120,000 people live here, and this is how it appears on Google Maps. It's basically a road. There's a hospital marked, but there's nothing else sort of on there. So this is how it looks in OpenStreetMap, and that's the platform that's used for these mapathons. It's an open source platform, and this was actually mapped by about 70 people in one evening. And if you even look a bit closer, you can sort of see, they've got the detail of this compared to the Google map. There's roads or side roads, there's buildings, schools and various things are mapped. So that's what we're trying to do tonight. Is we're going to be trying to do some mapping to build and create the base mapping for areas in the world where, say, that are often and where most vulnerable people need and can need assistance. Okay, so who's involved in the Missing Maps Foundation or Missing Maps project? At the beginning, there were 4 founding organisations who were involved. There's the American Red Cross, British Red Cross, MSF, or Médecins Sans Frontières, Doctors Without Borders. And I suppose they're very well-known NGOs or organisations around the world. And there was another founding organisation, which is the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, which people, you probably may have never heard of them before. And essentially, they came into existence short in the end of 2010 or beginning of 2011, after the Haiti earthquake. So if people can't remember or don't know, so in 2010 there was a major earthquake in Port-au-Prince in Haiti. A large part of the Port-au-Prince was destroyed, and this is Haiti was one of those areas of the world where there was very little or no mapping, and so organisations going in didn't have anything there to use. But people started using this platform called OpenStreetMap on their own, just going in, looking at satellite imagery, and they started to map Port-au-Prince. And within about a week and a half, they had the vast majority of the greater Port-au-Prince area mapped. And as a result of that, then these people then came together and formed the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, and they have then continued on with that work since then. The 4 founders, I suppose, have been joined by other organisations who have see the benefit of using this information, and you can see them all listed there. They're a combination of other Red Cross organisations, universities. Map Action is it's a charity based in the UK that sends GIS professionals to disaster areas when disasters strike or things where assistance is needed. So it's sort of grown since its beginnings. And the project has those 3 main steps that it goes through in data collection and use. So step 1, which is what we're going to be doing tonight, is it's remote volunteers like us. We trace satellite imagery to add information into OpenStreetMap. The second step is community volunteers they add local detail, but it's them who they live on. Obviously, they're on the ground. They know where the schools are, the hospitals are, what roads are called, where there are water points, things like that. And they add that important information that the NGOs would find critical and very useful. And then the third step is the information can be used, and because OpenStreetMap it's an open platform, the information is freely and available for use for anybody. It can be downloaded, it can be can be used without free of charge and without cost on that. So this is stage one. This is what a mapathon normally looks like. Large group of people in a room. They may be having something to eat, something to drink, and they're around a computer or around laptops, computers, mapping. So what we'll see later on is, there's an area is selected to be mapped. It's broken up into squares. People pick a square, and they look at the aerial photography, and they map what they find. So if it's a building, they will trace around them, rectangles around them. If it's roads, they will add in lines for the roads. And so that's one way of contributing to remote mapping. There's also another second way you can contribute is through MapSwipe, which is it's an app you can get for your Android or Apple device, or through the Google Play Store, or say the App Store. And essentially what this is it's becoming more critical part of the mapping. So if you can imagine, there may be a large area of a country, and if you're trying to map that, it's going to be quicker if you actually know maybe where towns are, where villages are, where people live. And so what MapSwipe does is you load it up. It gives you a set of 6 images every time. And then if you see images or houses or roads, whatever they are looking for, you then tap on the square and it will turn green. And then you swipe to the right, and it'll give you another 6 images, and you work your way through a section of an area that is going to be mapped. And this then allows, I suppose, the organisation who needs this map, that they know, they might need to include this area, this square here for mapping, because there's nothing there, nothing to be mapped. But they know that they may need to add in these 4 squares there to be mapped. Okay, so again, this is just an example of the field mapping. So as you can see, these are local people who live in this area. They they have got printouts from OpenStreetMap. It's called field papers, and they will then walk around. They will write in details, like say the street names, other important information. Then those can actually be scanned back into OpenStreetMap to upload the information, the detail there. And then say the third and final stage is then once the mapping information has been produced, then humanitarian organisations, like we've seen on the list, can use that information to assist with their operations on the ground. So these maps aren't very clear, but these are the type of things that then MSF and other organisations can use the information for. I think this one here is for flight times or and things like that. Actually, sorry, that's an earthquake with shock waves coming out. So it's if they didn't have the mapping information, then they obviously they couldn't produce the maps like this. I suppose these are, whenever we are mapping, it's just remembering these are the type of things that you are really helping to solve and helping the NGOs to deal with. Getting supplies when they need to go, dealing with infectious disease, assisting after earthquakes or hurricanes or floods, also with helping with vaccination campaigns and you know, solving malnutrition and other things as well. Just so just going to come on to, so there actually is a Missing Maps for Schools project, which sort of MSF run, and they sort of set this up. It's more in largely because they in conjunction with the Duke of Edinburgh and other volunteer. They obviously understand young people want to volunteer, and so they set up this to, I suppose, help facilitate this. So the idea is then that you could set up a club in your school, where the pupils could come, learn how to map, and then obviously they may come for a period of time over the year, and then they would, if they had to do a certain number of months, 3 months or 6 months, depending on their level or how long they have to do the volunteering for, then there is an opportunity that they can do that. Obviously, that may not be possible right now, but you could still, pupils could still, contribute through MapSwipe. It's very simple. They could download it, to do the mapping, or on their own, or you could do a one-off event in school potentially for, using for missing maps, just to everyone to sign up, have a go, of an area, and contribute to the project. So this is essentially the end of my presentation. Does anyone have any questions at this time on that? If you do, feel free to put them in the chat or shout out.
There's nothing written in there at the moment, Stephen, keeping an eye on it for you.
No problem.
Okay. Everybody's just excited and ready to get onto some mapping, I think.
Okay, I'll move on then. So all the mapping done through Missing Maps is done through this. It's this one website. It's called it's sort of operated and run by the Humanitarian OpenStreetMap team, and it's called the Tasking Manager site. So I suppose again, it sort of dates back to the early days of after the Haiti earthquake, where they, as they came together as a group, they realized they needed to be organized, and they needed to, suppose, separate out how they could separate out mapping tasks for individual people to take and to map. And I suppose over the years it has gone through many versions and changes, and this was the latest version of it, and now it is very good because you can do everything in the one place. And I give you some. It's the homepage here. It gives you a bit more, say, information about the mapping and how it's used, and just a bit of how it makes a difference and things like that, which I'll not go through tonight. It also gives you some facts and figures about over the last 10 or so years how much they have mapped. So to get to do the mapping, you first need an OpenStreetMap account. I know Rachel had asked, and the email had gone out and asked if you could create an account before then, but if you haven't, don't worry. So if you go to the website here, tasks.hotosm.org, if you click sign up, you will then be prompted with some information, and if you step through that, it only takes a couple of minutes to then to create an OpenStreetMap account. If you've already done one, and you haven't already, if you log in, you'll be prompted with this window here to log into your OpenStreetMap account. If you log in, you're asked then about your granting access. If you just click grant access, and this will then log you in. And as you can see, that the screen then changes. So obviously, if my information here, I'm a classes and advanced mapper. so hopefully I don't gonna live up to that tonight. And this is then we presented with what you say here is then these are projects that I've contributed to in the past. So if you don't have anything there, or your page looks different, don't worry about that. It will soon you'll soon be getting mapping. You can soon getting things in there. So to find a task, a mapping task that we contribute to tonight, if you then go and you click this Explore Projects button at the top here, and this then displays and brings up all of the mapping projects that are available to map. And as you can see, there's 230 pages of them, so there's a lot of map tasks to do. And they sort of usually the ones in the front pages are marked as urgent, and so they're high priority. So say as you can see here, obviously COVID-19 is going on at the minute, so obviously they are the most urgent tasks. Or if there's a hurricane that's predicted to go through an area, or has already gone through an area, they would be classed as urgent. So they would appear on this screen here, and they're marked for skill level. So you can see here, this one's always they're either beginner, intermediate, or intermediate, or advanced. And what I would normally, just if I was doing a mapathon, I would, and again, if you were going to run an event in school, I would stick to a beginner task, because they are usually the easiest to achieve, and there's nothing worse than you're asking someone to do something new or do something they haven't done, and then feeling that they coming away and they're not able to do it. So I always try and do do an easier task for people. So the task I'm going to get us to do is it's a beginner one, and I also then want this, if you do more filters here, if we go to organization, and then if we search for the Tanzanian Development Trust, and we click apply, it will bring back all their tasks. And we're going to do this, contribute to this task here, which is task 9806 in Mwelba District North in Tanzania. So if we click on that, it will open us up with here. So the Tanzanian Development Trust is an organization that is a member of Missing Maps, and there are they focus on and they try and help the girls in Tanzania, trying to deal with gender-based violence and things like that, and they help that the mapping allows them to help do the work there. So I liked sort of doing smaller and non-urgent tasks for organizations sometimes, because it's if there's 8 of us doing 10 buildings each, it's 80 buildings added. Where for a very small project that isn't high priority, that's a lot of mapping compared to maybe, whereas there are other urgent projects that may, lots of people might go straight to those. So I like to pick something that's not nearly as urgent, but it still is useful. So to get actually into to get into mapping, if we click the red contribute button in the bottom right hand corner, and then it brings us, you see here, then it zooms us into our map, and this is what happens. Again, I picked this one because it shows the benefit of using map swipe. So you can see here it's a bit of a patchwork, because obviously they have identified that in here there is just potentially there's nothing there to map. So there's two ways you can pick a square. You can either just click map a task, and it will randomly select you a square, or you can manually click on it. I'll go back and do that again. So you can say click map a task and it will open, or else you can go in pick a square, map selected task, and it will take you back through to here. And this is our editing window here. I'm going to go back out again because my imagery has not loaded properly.
So Stephen, can I just ask you, does that mean everywhere here it's available for mapping? That is the
Yeah,
status of all of those squares, but then I can see one is locked on my screen. Is that the one then that you
yes,
have opened?
that's the one I
Cool.
have opened. Yeah. I'll go back out again. Sorry, I should have explained that a bit better. So anything that is white here is available to be mapped. If somebody else locks it out, it appears with the lock on it. If something's blue, it's already been mapped and is ready to be validated, to be checked by a more experienced mapper. The green one is where it's finished, it's completely mapped. So people, it's already done, so everything in there will already been carried out. So I'm going to select this task here. Okay, so the instructions here, they're important. They'll tell you what the task wants you to map, and it'll tell you what imagery they want you to use. Sometimes if you click on the three squares here, there's a wide range of imagery from various different providers. There's some from Bing, some from Esri. In this case, they want us to use the Maxar Premium imagery, which is here. So if you have as I had there, yeah, like a black screen whenever you opened it, if you click on your background settings, and then if you select your Maxar imagery, then it will switch to that. Okay, so we're being asked to map buildings and roads. Now, what I'd say is I always tell people to first concentrate on buildings first. Roads can be a bit more tricky in terms of because a road should link into other roads, and should always join like a main highway or a main road and things like that. So they can get very tricky. So if you're going to map anything, I would recommend just doing the buildings. And as a start, I always just have a general look around and looking at the image, trying to identify where are the buildings. This is a pretty good image. The buildings stand out pretty clearly against the green here. So I've identified this building here. There's 1, 2, 3. So I'm going to now go in and I'll map them. Until you do that, I use one of the tools at the top here, the add feature tool. So we can add a point, we can add lines, and we can add areas. So for roads, we would use lines. For buildings, we use areas. We use points for more, as it says there, for more like smaller individual things like those, like so the water points or those other things. So we very rarely use the point feature in missing maps. It's more lines in the areas. So you can either click on the area here, or you can press 3 on your keyboard, and you can see there that when I select this, that the hand then changes into a cross, and I then select the corner of a building. So I click my left mouse button, and it locks a point into there, and it comes a line. I then go to another corner. I click again, and I'm going to capture, even though these might be potentially could be 2 buildings, they're sort of so close together, I'm going to capture them as one. So I'm just tracing around the outside there, and then to finish I go to my last corner and I double click, and then you'll see that the area will fill in, and it will sort of gives this pulsing red, and then we see this feature type bar opens on the left hand side here. The first time you come in, so because I have mapped some other buildings, this comes a shortcut. And we sort of have to assign. So we've mapped around our building, and now we have to basically give it say what it is, so that people coming after us know, oh, that's a building.
Stephen, you broke up with me there a little bit, so if you
Sorry.
could just go, I think maybe from, I don't know if it's the same for everybody else, but just in case, maybe just from whenever you completed that area.
Sure. So just again, so once we map around the building, we obviously then have to give it, we attribute it. We would call it in GIS. You say what it is. So because we are looking at this from a satellite image, essentially, we only know that we can tell that as a building. We don't know what type of building it is. You know, that could be a hospital, it could be a school. I don't know. I'm looking at it from a picture. So what we do then is we know it's a building, so all we're going to attribute it as is a building. So if you go into building features and then you click building, and it will then attribute that now as being that as a building. And the last thing we do then is, if we select it again, we click Q on our keyboard, and it will then square our corners. So if you can sort of see it there, as we do undo and redo, it sort of takes it and makes everything nice and square, 90 degrees, etc. And that's essentially, that's one building mapped. So we had those two there, and then there's one here on the edge. And if you find, you're obviously given the area here, and it sort of says do not edit outside your area, but sometimes you will find, if you are if there's always going to be a building, there might be something that's on the edge here. So this is half in my area, half out my area. What we do there is, I'm going to map this because I suppose the majority of this building is on in my square. So if it's only a slither of a corner, I would leave that and let the other person in the adjacent square map that. But if it is significant amount, then you can map that. So this is sort of a circular building. So where I use Q here to square my circles, the editor here has a shortcut for circular buildings. So what we do is we do a bit of a triangle. We then again attribute it as being a building, and then if we press O, the shortcut for O is for circular buildings. It then takes those 3 points you've drawn and draws the rest as a circle. And that's another building map. So does anyone have any questions about, I suppose, about the mapping, the actual physical mapping process? If you have any queries or any questions, or you want me to go over anything again, just say or pop it in the chat.
Stephen, I'll ask you something while
Sure.
everybody else is waiting. Hopefully not to test you. This is not planned. But I clicked on a square, and there actually weren't any buildings in it, but there is a road and what is it, a power line. But then I can click on those already, and it already says the feature type. So
Yep.
in that case, it actually says on the right-hand side, is this task completely mapped? So I guess could I just give more information on those, because it's asking for like track type, the surface. So could I just be adding information to those features?
It's sort of, in those cases, if it's already there, Rachel, I would, what you could do is you could obviously make sure your max or your imagery is selected, and you could
Yep.
sometimes you find people will be, oh, this might be a good example, you know out here, zoom the way out, obviously this looks like it's on the line. It's okay, it doesn't look too bad. It can be when you zoom in a bit further, then sometimes it is where you get the,
Yeah.
it's not matching up exactly, so you could go in and you could just obviously make sure that it's exactly following the road.
Mm-hmm.
If it's already classed as being, say a minor unclassified road or a primary road, it can be very hard to determine what road type it is, because we're
Yes,
obviously
it's
we're dealing with roads here that, this is probably a major road, but it obviously
yeah.
doesn't look like any major road that we would be used to. So in that case, I would just say just make sure it follows exactly, along your map and matches the imagery,
Mm-hmm.
and then I would, yeah, if that is the case, and you could, it's the task that you mapped, yes, and then submit task, and it will then take you back out to the map again to allow you to select
Okay.
another task, and it will then say that is finished, and then it'll be ready. Somebody will obviously be ready
Somebody
to
can
validate.
review it.
Yeah.
Yep. Great.
On that,
Thanks.
on,
Just. Mm-hmm.
on that, if you noticed here, the square is locked out to you for 2 hours.
Okay.
So, but if you're not able to spend 2 hours doing it, say, I've added those 3 buildings or 2 buildings, something's happened, I need to go. I will, first of all, I'll save. So I click save. This will tell you if you've done any errors, say you've drawn around the building, but you haven't maybe given it, attributed it, said it is a building, it will throw you up a warning here, and it'll basically, you won't be able to save it
Okay.
until you can add that. If you just click then upload, this then saves those to OpenStreetMaps. This is then taking this, and this is just adding them to OpenStreetMaps. So these buildings then, within a very short period of time, if not immediately, are available to everybody else in the
Mm-hmm.
world. So if I've done
Cool.
those, I've saved it. I have to go, or I want to go and map somewhere else. If I haven't finished completely mapping this, so if I click no, I then say submit task. It will then bring me back out to the main mapping page here, or
Cool.
it should
That's good to know about the
finally.
2 hour thing. I have another question here for you, Stephen.
Sure.
Is that okay now? So this actually, I thought this was really cool. Whenever you had the shortcut to make it a circular building, I thought that was really nice. So the question is, when you press Q or O for the different building shapes, do you need to press Control with the letter?
No, it's just Q on its own. So I will go in. I'll go into another task here. So again, if I quickly draw around that, I've attributed it. If it's just Q on its own, so if I just tap Q there, and you can sort of see it's just
Mm-hmm.
um, there
Easy as
are
that.
yeah I think there are a couple of oh no, QZ is like obviously goes back, so that takes that off. But Q is it's just Q on its own. Now what I would say is sometimes, say I had drawn it like that, if it's too the angle's too extreme, it won't square that. You have to be, like so that's even too much. So if you're way out, say it'll do everything else,
Mm-hmm.
but it won't do that. It won't do that last corner. If you get, sometimes you might get, I suppose, say there was a smaller building, say coming out here. You notice here there's these triangles, so you can add a lot in so individual the individual vertexes for you. So you could, if for whatever reason you drew the rectangle and you wanted to add that extra bit in, you can go. You don't have to delete it all. You can use, say, those triangles to amend that. Does anybody else have any other questions?
There's nothing else there, I don't think. Let me just... Oh, wait, I think there's... Oh, no, that's the same one. I think we're okay. And I'll pop that out. So I just have this all kind of minimized on my screen. So we've answered that question. Thank you for asking us something there. And there's nothing else in the chat. So I think everybody's good. And I think I could see from when you went back on your screen there was a couple of locked squares. So hopefully people are having a go.
Yeah, what I would say is it has to have a go, and take it slow, and and cause sometimes it can be a bit, if you're not used to looking, if you're not used to looking at picking out the buildings, I because I've done it for so long now, if I straight away, my eye is drawn to where buildings are, and also I have a bit of experience of and a job of looking at imagery and trying to draw around, identify different features and things like that. So your eye does get used to it and does get trained to it. So I normally just take it slow, and I normally first of all might pan around, zoom in a good bit, pan around, try and identify where things are, um, all around the square, and then go back to the start, and then just start mapping. One thing I should say, if you're sometimes you may get a really highly densely populated area, and obviously this is out in the country, so the buildings are very well spaced out here. They're very very easy, and but say you're in a highly dense area, where it's like a sea of buildings. What they say is, you should don't try and pick out the individual buildings. So if it looks like if it, say for example, was like the best example I could give was, say, in a city there was a terrace of houses. In this, you would map the whole terrace and mark it as all of it as a building, because it gets too hard and too footery to try and map them as individual buildings. Somebody at a later stage, say, on the ground, they could classify them as individual buildings, or put a comment in saying, though, this is 10 buildings, not one, that type of thing. But it's easier just when you're looking at the imagery, say, just to capture. They talk about if you draw around where unless there's a discernible break, so if it's a huge building in the middle of a town, that's okay. As I say, somebody might will be able to come and give more information about that at a later stage. So so that's sometimes I suppose a bit like this here. These are probably two buildings, but I can't tell where the break is here, so I would capture this as as all being one. And what I would say is, you probably, if anybody is thinking of, I don't know, if anybody is thinking of potentially running a session in schools, in a school situation, I've done a couple, I did one last year for GIS Day in Methody in Belfast, and the kids, they do pick it up. They pick it up really quickly. You know, you sort of, I found you were sort of showing them, and they were 2 steps ahead of you. You know, they just saw what you were doing. They just picked it up. They took it in, and for them, I suppose it's the emphasis is, this. Yes, it's just was drawing rectangles on a computer, but it's trying to get through to them. This really could help someone if someone is, something happens in this area, and somebody needs to get help with them. It's good that they know that, this is then what they're doing is being uploaded on a worldwide system that people can access, and can be used to, necessarily to get people help. And it's also good. It's a good skill. Good digitizing is a good skill for them to know, to learn. If it might be one of the first things they're asked to do if they then maybe do geography or GIS at university, and if they've already done it, in this setting, well then, they will be a step ahead maybe of others who haven't done it before. So. Rachel, are you wanting anything else or any other questions come through, or?
No other questions. I think all of that sounds great. And I was just thinking there, when I did this before, I maybe had a bit of a worry that, well, what if I do the wrong thing? But at the end of the day, you're mapping buildings, roads. It can take a few minutes maybe to get yourself used to what you can see there in the imagery, but it's easy to do the difference between something that's an area or a line. But then there is always that step where somebody else is going to come in and validate and check what you've done. So you don't want to get too, I'm just guessing, you don't want to get too worked up about it, because it's not just going to be like you click submit and next thing the emergency services in that country are using it. There are a few steps in between. So am I right
Well,
in giving that
yeah,
advice? Or
there is, yeah, and but and yes, it is as well, and it's remembering. So, these buildings have never been on any map before. So a building that maybe is not, quite square or quite circular, it's better to be on there, and at least somebody may know it's there, rather
yeah,
than, it not being there, or. And what I would say, so, um, on your account, if you do the bell here, you do get, people by, people who contribute to the project, and validate it. They would, the people are encouraged, if you are validating, to send people messages and say, um, either thanks for helping do the mapping, or, if there's something that they've noticed, a bit of a help or assistance, guidance to people, they are advised to give that, and it's not people are asked to do it in a polite manner. So, if people may, so some people, if you ever notice that, where you may get a people email or a notification to say, oh, you have somebody else commented on your mapping, say they may offer you tips, and the community usually is pretty good if, to on that, to help. What I should say, if tonight has sort of, got you interested in doing some more, um, there are events that happen. Missing map events happen all of the time. This week is, obviously is GIS Day. It's also, Geography Awareness Week. So, this week there are lots of, this is us here,
there's our
lots of
webinar.
events happening. So, these are actually, there's one in London, happens every month, and there's also another one that happens in Cambridge. They used to be in person. They're now virtual. And so if you want to find out more, want to give it a go, sign up. And again, there'll be people there who they're actually probably be more easier run by the likes of MSF and Red Cross, who then, they really know what it is used for. They may have been on the ground and helped with the second stage of the project and things like that. And they will give you lots of help and assistance, and train you, better than I could. um, and say just give it a go. It's Once you start to get into it, can be very relaxing, calming, to
Yeah,
help you
therapeutic.
wind down at the end of the day.
That sounds good. Well, thanks, Stephen. I have a couple of things I just wanted to say at the end, and I know we're running out of time, so I won't go into too much detail or demonstrate too much else, but it's just in case. I think I know some of you are signed up to the ArcGIS for Schools program, but just in case you're not really, what I wanted to explain was that if you had a mapathon or your class got involved with one of those events that's on that site, it would be really cool if you could tell us about it. And of course, just letting us know, send an email. That's any way to hear how you've been getting on. We'd absolutely love it. But another way is to create a story map, and you could perhaps take some screenshots or recordings of you and your students doing the mapping, and then upload those to the story map, as well as adding in other maps and images along the way. And I guess I will quickly share my screen here if I can. Stephen, you might just need to pass it back to me, but I'll see if I can do it myself. Oh, I can make myself a presenter.
There you go.
There we go, and I will show my screen. So Stephen, you can let me know if there's any issues there.
Not when I see the screen.
Yeah. So I won't take too long on this, as I know need to go, but I have logged into ArcGIS Online already. This is what your organisation page looks like, and then to go to story maps, you can click on this app catalogue up here and click on story maps. You'll see any that I've already created, but just to get started, click here, new story. If you haven't made one before, that will be in the center of your screen, and start from scratch. And there are lots of resources online which I'll just send to you to give you an idea of how to put this together. I'm not going to go through everything now, but you can have a title and your introduction with a nice cover image and different designs there for the look and feel story map. In a way, it's a bit like a bit like a PowerPoint presentation, but I think it has kind of a slightly modern feel, and it's super easy to add in your maps and any other spatial information. And you can just have this scroll effect, which is quite easy for everybody to use. So I guess the main thing here, you can add images in. So if you've got screenshots of any of these pages that you have, you might want to show the different stages of how you have contributed in these areas. Then you could upload those into your story map. You can also then add a map itself if you already have one in your account. But a cool thing to do is just add an express map. So you don't need to have something created before. There's not a lot of preparation needed. You could then search by location and quickly plot a point to show where you've been mapping, and then add that into your story map. And I guess a good example of this is one by MSF. So this is a story map that they've put together, and it's how we vaccinated children without maps, a story with a happy ending. So that's always good to know. And you can see here that they've put together text and images, and they're obviously telling this story of what the issues were and then what they've done to help. So if I scroll down, you can put a lot in here, and it's all very interactive, like it scrolls into one another. So this is a bit like what Stephen showed you earlier, how you've got Google Maps and it doesn't really give you any information. And it shows you the hand-drawn maps. And then if I keep going, there explains a bit more. So this is one of the cities that was mapped by the Missing Maps volunteers. And they've got a bit more information, maps embedded in here, just to really explain how did they put this project together and what did they do. So I'm just imagining that it would be great to have something similar coming from any classes or schools that have done this, because then we can put those on our website, if I can find that here. I've got so many tabs open as usual. And we have this school spotlight page where we've showcased other projects that schools have done. So it'd be really nice to add some in here from Missing Maps. This is also where you can find from our school's website how to sign up to the programme if you haven't already done that. So that was a bit of a whirlwind for me at the end, but I just wanted to let you know how much we'd love to hear about it and what we'll do with that afterwards, because these story maps will then encourage other teachers to get involved. So I will just check if there's any final questions or comments from anybody. And hopefully, I'll go to attendees. No other questions. So if everybody is happy, we'll wrap up there. I hope you have enjoyed that. And tomorrow is GIS Day, so keep an eye, I guess, on our Esri Ireland and GIS in Schools Twitter feeds for see what we're up to, and we'd love to see if you're doing anything in your classes as well. So Stephen, thank you very much for presenting that to us this evening.
No problem.
And thanks everybody else for joining in, and we'll chat to you soon. Bye.
Bye now.